"You saved my life. Now you must be my husband," the Apache widow told the rancher. Elias McCall rode alone through the rugged Arizona desert, the late afternoon sun beating down on his broad shoulders. The land stretched endlessly in shades of brown and gold, dotted with hardy cacti and jagged rocks that seemed to rise from the earth like the bones of some ancient creature. His horse, a strong, dark bay named Thunder, trotted steadily, sensing the rhythm of Elias's cautious mind. A rancher by trade and a man used to solitude, Elias had long learned to read the desert, the whisper of the wind, the distant cry of a hawk, and the faint imprint of human or animal footprints on the dry, cracked soil. Elias had been traveling to check on one of his remote ranches, a small outpost nestled near the base of a canyon far from the nearest town. He preferred these trips alone. It gave him time to think, to feel the pulse of the land, and to keep his mind clear. But today there was something different in the air. A tension, subtle but unmistakable. A faint rustling near a thicket of mesquite caught his attention. He slowed Thunder to a careful walk, hand resting on the worn leather of his revolver, a weapon he had learned to rely on as much as his own instincts. Then he saw her, a woman crouched on the ground, her hands raised in a desperate attempt to protect herself. Her dark hair was tangled with dust and leaves, and her clothes, simple but strong, were torn in places. Two men approached her, rough-looking and armed, their voices cruel and mocking. Elias's heart clenched, not for fear of the danger which he was used to, but for the vulnerability in the woman's eyes. Without thinking, he spurred Thunder forward, galloping into the open, shouting a warning that made the outlaws glance his way. They didn't notice the horse until it was almost upon them. Thunder reared, and Elias fired his revolver once, the bullet striking the ground near their feet with a thunderous crack. The men cursed, startled, and instinctively ducked. "Get out of here!" Elias shouted, voice firm and commanding. He wasn't a man who wasted words, but there was no time for hesitation. The outlaws scrambled, retreating into the rocks and shadows, realizing that this lone rancher was not a man to be trifled with. Elias's sharp eyes followed their every move until they disappeared over a ridge. Only then did he turn his attention back to the woman. She was trembling, crouched low, her chest rising and falling quickly as she tried to catch her breath. "You're safe now," Elias said gently, dismounting and approaching her slowly. He didn't want to startle her. "I won't let them hurt you." The woman's eyes widened. There was gratitude there, but also a wariness that spoke of someone who had seen too much danger already. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice soft but firm. You saved my life." Elias nodded, offering his hand to help her up. "What are you doing out here alone?" he asked. "It's not safe for anyone, especially a woman, to be traveling alone in these canyons." She hesitated, her eyes darting to the shadows where the outlaws had disappeared. Then she spoke, her voice steadying. I am not alone. My family is nearby, but they cannot help me now. Please come with me. I cannot be safe until I return to them." There was a quiet strength in her words, a determination that Elias could respect. He had faced many dangers in his life, but there was something different about her courage. He nodded slowly. "All right," led the way. She stood, brushing dust and leaves from her clothes. As Elias followed her through the narrow canyon path, he noticed the careful way she moved, each step deliberate, as if she had spent her entire life navigating these rugged lands. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows that danced across the rocks. The air smelled of sagebrush and dry earth. the scent of the desert at twilight, both comforting and wild. "Your name?" Elias asked as they walked. "Naya," she replied. "And yours?" "I, Elias McCall," he said. "I have a ranch nearby." "You could have just asked for help in town." Naya shook her head. "The road to town is long, and there are dangers there as well. I could not risk it. These men, they have been following me." Her gaze dropped for a moment, and Elias could see the pain in her eyes, a silent story of loss and fear. They walked in silence for a while, only the sound of their footsteps and Thunder's hooves on the rocky ground breaking the quiet. Elias felt a strange sense of connection, not just to Naya but to the land around them. It was harsh, unforgiving, and yet it had a beauty that only someone who truly knew it could appreciate. As darkness fell, Naya led Elias to a small clearing near a stream. The water was shallow but clear, reflecting the stars as they began to appear in the night sky. She knelt by the water, cupping it in her hands to drink, and then offered some to Elias. "You must be thirsty," she said. He took the water gratefully. "Thank you." "Da. You move through this land as if you belong to it," he said, admiring her ease in the wild terrain. Naya's lips curved into a faint smile. "I do belong here. My family has lived in these canyons for generations."
This land knows us, and we know it. But the world beyond,
"It does not always understand us." Elias nodded, sensing the weight of her words. He had seen conflict between settlers and native people before, and he knew the misunderstandings could be deadly. Yet here was a woman who trusted him, enough to guide him into her world. Night deepened, and the temperature dropped sharply. Elias built a small fire while Naya gathered dry wood. They sat close, the flames casting flickering shadows on their faces. There was a quiet camaraderie that formed in shared danger, a trust born not of words but of deeds. "You risk your life for me," Naya said quietly, watching the fire. "Why?" Elias paused, considering. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said simply. "No one deserves to be hurt when they cannot defend themselves." Her eyes softened, a mixture of respect and gratitude. "You are brave," she said. "Not many men would have done what you did. Many would have ridden away." Elias shrugged modestly. "I have seen too much cruelty to ignore it, and I have lived long enough to know when someone needs help. Today, it was you." They spoke little after that, the night filled with the sounds of the desert, the rustle of the wind through the mesquite, the distant howl of a coyote, and the gentle trickle of the stream. Elias couldn't help but notice the quiet strength in Naya, how her eyes reflected the stars above, and how her spirit seemed untamed yet serene. Eventually, Naya stood, indicating that they should rest. Elias offered her a blanket, and they settled near the fire, keeping watch over each other as the night stretched on. Despite the danger that had brought them together, there was a sense of peace in their shared silence, a calm that only comes when two people understand the fragility of life and the importance of trust. As Elias drifted to sleep, he thought about the road ahead. Protecting Naya would not be easy. There were still dangers lurking, and their journey had only just begun. But for the first time in a long while, he felt a purpose beyond his own survival. He was no longer just a rancher riding through the desert. He was a protector, and someone's life depended on him. And Naya, the woman he had saved, seemed to understand that better than anyone. She had faced fear and loss with courage, and she had trusted a stranger with her life. In that quiet desert night, amidst the stars and the crackling fire, a bond began to form, one born of danger, respect, and the unspoken promise of loyalty. The desert was vast and unforgiving, But in that moment, Elias felt a flicker of hope. Whatever lay ahead, he would face it. He had saved a life today, and somehow he knew that this act of courage would change both of their worlds forever. Elias woke with the first light of dawn, the fire reduced to glowing embers, and the desert still quiet except for the distant cry of a hawk. Thunder, his horse, grazed nearby, tossing his head lazily, as if he too were aware of the fragile calm of the morning. Elias stretched, rubbing the stiffness from his muscles, and glanced at Naya. She was already awake, tending to the small stream and washing her hands and face in the clear, cold water. Her movements were deliberate, careful, yet graceful, as if she were part of the land itself. "Good morning," Elias said softly, not wanting to startle her. Naya turned, her dark eyes meeting his, and for a moment there was no need for words. She nodded slightly, acknowledging his presence, and offered him a small smile. "Morning," she replied, her voice calm but strong. After a brief breakfast of dried meat and bread Elias had carried, they prepared to move. The canyon ahead was steep and rocky, and Elias could see that traveling alone would have been nearly impossible for Naya, despite her agility and knowledge of the terrain. As they walked, he noticed the way she observed everything. The subtle signs of animals nearby, the faint tracks of humans, the changes in the wind that could signal danger. It was clear that her connection to this land was deep, and Elias felt a mixture of admiration and respect. "Your people live nearby?" he asked cautiously, trying not to overstep. Naya nodded. "Yes. A few miles up the canyon, there is a small community. We keep to ourselves, but we are careful. These lands have many dangers, not just from the settlers, but from those who would seek to take what is not theirs." Elias listened quietly, sensing the weight of her words. He had lived most of his life among settlers and ranchers, men who often acted without thought or respect for others. But here was a woman who understood loyalty, community, and survival in ways he had never considered. As the sun climbed higher, they came across a narrow pass, jagged rocks rising on either side like silent guardians. Elias led Thunder carefully, while Naya moved ahead lightly, almost floating over the stones. Suddenly, she stopped, crouching low, her hand raised. Elias followed her gaze and saw the faint footprints of 3 men, likely the same outlaws from the previous day, trailing them. "They are still following us," Naya said quietly, her voice firm but her eyes reflecting the tension she felt. Elias's jaw tightened. He had expected this, but seeing the evidence confirmed the danger. "We need to move carefully," he said, his voice low. "They may not give up easily." Naya nodded. "There is a safer route through the rocks. Few know it, but it is hidden and fast. Follow me." Together, they navigated the twisting paths, the sun casting sharp shadows that made the rocks seem taller and more threatening. Elias felt his senses sharpen with every step, every rustle of leaves or snapping twig putting him on alert. He noticed how Naya seemed to know instinctively where to step, avoiding loose stones and sudden drops. He had saved her life once, but now he felt that she was guiding him safely, returning the favor in her quiet way. By midday they reached a small plateau, where the wind blew strong and the view of the canyon stretched endlessly below them. Naya paused, looking out over the cliffs, and for a moment Elias saw a shadow of sadness cross her face. "My husband," she whispered, almost to herself. Elias glanced at her, unsure if he should speak. She turned to him, her eyes steady. "He was taken by those who do not respect our people. I have no family left except those who remain here, and I must protect them. That is why I cannot return without help." Elias felt a pang of sympathy. He had seen loss before, men and women whose lives had been upended by violence or misfortune. But Naya's pain was different, quieter, yet deeper, carried with strength and dignity. "You are brave," he said softly. "I will help you, Naya. You have my word." The rest of the day passed with careful travel. They avoided the main trails, moving through narrow gorges and over low ridges, Elias following Naya's lead. Occasionally, they would pause to rest, and during those moments he began to learn more about her life. She spoke of the traditions of her people, the importance of family, the way they honored the land, and how they worked together to survive. Elias listened with fascination, realizing how little he had truly understood about the world beyond his ranch. At one point, as the sun began to dip toward the horizon again, they encountered a small grove of juniper trees. Naya signaled Elias to stop. "We must wait here," she said. "The path ahead is watched." Elias dismounted, leading Thunder to the side and letting him graze. He crouched beside Naya, who had taken a seat on a flat rock, and watched the distant ridge where the sun's last rays glinted off stones. "They could be anyone," Elias murmured. "Settlers, outlaws, people who would harm you without thinking." Naya nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Yes, that is why I must be cautious. My people have learned to read the land and the signs of danger, but even we can be caught off guard. That is why I am grateful you are here." Night fell quickly, and with it came a chill. Elias built a small fire while Naya gathered kindling and dry leaves, her movements precise and efficient. As the fire crackled, they shared a simple meal, the silence between them comfortable now, no longer filled with only fear. There was a rhythm to their partnership, a silent understanding that each was watching for the other, protecting and supporting without needing to speak constantly. "You trust me?" Elias said finally, breaking the quiet. Naya looked into the flames, her face illuminated by the flickering light. "I trust those who prove themselves," she said. "And today you have proven yourself." Elias nodded, feeling a warmth that had little to do with the fire. "Then we will continue together. We will get you home safely." The night was long, the desert around them alive with sounds, the rustling of leaves, the distant howl of coyotes, and the faint calls of nightbirds. Elias took turns keeping watch with Naya, the responsibility of safety pressing on both of them. Yet in the shared moments, there was also a growing sense of connection. Despite the danger, despite the differences in their worlds, they began to understand each other in ways words alone could not express. By dawn, they were moving again, carefully descending into a narrow valley that would lead them closer to Naya's people. Elias marveled at her knowledge of every rock and tree, how she knew the safest spots to walk and the best places to hide. It was a skill born of experience, survival, and respect for the land. As they neared a small stream that marked the outskirts of her community, Elias noticed the signs of life: smoke curling from a distant fire, the faint sound of voices carried on the wind. Naya's eyes brightened with relief, but also with caution. "We are almost there," she whispered. "But stay alert. There are still those who would harm us." Elias's hand rested on his revolver, ready if needed. He could see the determination in her face, the courage that had guided them through danger after danger. And he understood that this journey was more than a physical passage. It was a test of trust, of respect, and of the bonds that could form between two people from very different worlds. By late morning, they reached the edge of Naya's community, a small, hidden enclave of homes built with care and surrounded by the rugged terrain of the canyon. People came out to greet her, their faces a mix of relief and curiosity, and Elias felt the weight of his role in bringing her safely to this place. Naya introduced him carefully, her voice steady but proud. "This is Elias McCall," she said. "He helped me when I needed it most. He brought me home safely." The elders nodded, their eyes studying Elias with quiet scrutiny. He met their gaze, offering a respectful nod in return. He knew that words alone would not earn their trust. It was his actions that mattered. As the sun climbed high, casting light on the canyon and the small community, Elias felt a sense of accomplishment, but also a new understanding of the world he had entered. The journey was far from over, and he knew there would be challenges ahead. Yet in that moment, he also felt a bond forming, a connection of trust, courage, and respect that neither he nor Naya could ignore. And in the quiet moments, as he watched her move through her community with confidence and grace, Elias realized that this was only the beginning of a story much larger than himself, one that would test both his strength and his heart. Elias stayed close to Naya as she led him through her small community. The homes were simple but strong, built from wood and stone, blending naturally with the rugged canyon walls. Children played near a stream, their laughter echoing softly through the narrow paths. Elders tended small gardens or sat in quiet conversation, watching the day unfold. Elias felt a mix of curiosity and respect. This was a place full of life, yet carefully protected, where every person seemed to know their role and every action mattered. Naya introduced him carefully, pointing out her friends and family members. "This is Elias McCall," she said. "He saved my life. He has brought me home safely." The elders' eyes studied Elias closely, their expressions calm but serious. Elias knew that in this community, trust was earned, not given lightly. He nodded respectfully, meeting their gaze. "It is an honor to meet you," he said. "I only did what I had to do." One elder, a woman with silver hair and wise eyes, stepped forward. She spoke softly, her voice carrying authority despite its quiet tone. "You have done more than save a life, Elias McCall. You have honored us with courage and respect. But you must understand, the customs of this land are not like those outside the canyon. Your actions have consequences here." Elias listened carefully, sensing that the weight of her words went beyond mere courtesy. He had long learned that honor and trust often carried obligations, especially in places where survival depended on community and loyalty. Naya led him to her small home, a modest dwelling built against a cliff. Inside, the walls were lined with woven mats and simple tools, each item placed with purpose. She moved with grace, preparing a meal of roasted corn and beans, and Elias helped as best he could. There was a quiet rhythm to their work, each movement purposeful, each glance carrying unspoken understanding. After they ate, they sat outside on the edge of a low rock wall, watching the sun dip toward the horizon. The colors of the canyon deepened, shadows stretching across the rugged landscape, and a gentle wind carried the scent of sage and earth. Elias felt a growing connection, not just to Naya, but to the land, the people, and the life that thrived here despite the dangers beyond the canyon walls. Then, unexpectedly, Naya turned to him, her eyes steady and serious. "Elias, there is something I must tell you," she said, her voice calm but unwavering. Elias leaned forward slightly, sensing the gravity in her tone. "What is it?" he asked. "In our culture, when a person saves another's life, a bond is formed that cannot be ignored," she said. "By saving me, you have taken responsibility for my safety. That bond, it requires that we become partners for life. You must be my husband?" Elias blinked, caught completely off guard. The words hung in the air, strange and weighty. He had faced danger, outlaws, and wild terrain, but nothing had prepared him for this.
Your husband? He repeated slowly, struggling to find the right words. I didn't. I mean, I helped you because it was the right thing to do.
I didn't expect. Naya held his gaze, her eyes unwavering. I do not ask this lightly. My people honor these customs, and the bond formed by saving a life is sacred. To refuse would bring shame not only to you, but to the trust between our communities. You must understand, Elias McCall, this is not a choice in the way you see it.
It is a responsibility. Elias ran a hand over his face, trying to process what she had said.
He had always lived by his own rules, guided by law, honor, and personal choice. But here in this canyon, among people who had survived through courage, wisdom, and community, the rules were different. He respected her, admired her strength, and felt an unspoken connection that had grown since the day he saved her. Yet the idea of marriage, binding himself to someone he had only known for days, was daunting. I need time to understand, he said finally, his voice careful. This is a lot. I respect your customs, Naya, but I must be honest with myself. I cannot make this decision lightly. Naya's expression softened, though her eyes remained firm. I understand your hesitation, Elias. But understand this, the bond has already begun. Every choice you make now carries weight. You cannot walk away from what has started. Only honor it or dishonor it. They sat in silence, the canyon around them growing dark as night approached. Stars began to appear, their soft light reflecting off the jagged rocks, and the air cooled, carrying the faint scent of desert flowers. Elias felt the enormity of what Naya had said settling over him. He had saved her life, and now her world, and perhaps his own, was intertwined with hers in ways he could not yet fully grasp. Over the next few days, Elias stayed within the community, learning more about their daily life, their customs, and their history. He helped repair fences, tend small gardens, and guide Thunder through the rocky paths. Each task brought him closer to understanding the strength, intelligence, and resilience of the people around him. And through it all, Naya watched him closely, her presence a constant reminder of the bond she had declared. Elias also began to notice how deeply the community valued honor, respect, and loyalty. Decisions were made with care, and every action carried meaning. He understood that to reject Naya's proposal outright would not just affect her, it could disrupt the trust between her people and him, a trust he had worked hard to earn. One evening, after a long day of work, Elias and Naya sat by the fire outside her home. The air was quiet, filled with the sounds of crickets and the distant hoot of an owl. Naya spoke softly, her voice carrying a mix of hope and challenge. Elias, I know this is not easy for you, but understand that courage is not only facing danger in the wild, it is also facing the truth of responsibility. You have already shown courage in saving me. Now you must show courage in deciding how to honor that act. Elias looked into her eyes, seeing the honesty, the trust, and the quiet strength that had guided him through the canyon. He knew she was right. Courage was not only about action, it was about commitment, about standing for something larger than oneself. And in that moment, he felt a stirring of something deeper than respect or duty. There was admiration, trust, and perhaps even the beginnings of something he had never expected: affection. I will think carefully, Naya, he said finally. I cannot promise you an answer tonight, but I promise I will not dishonor the bond we share. Naya nodded, a small, almost imperceptible smile on her lips. That is all I ask, Elias. All I ask. The following days were filled with learning, observing, and small acts of mutual understanding. Elias helped protect the community from minor threats, a stray animal that could harm the livestock, or a dangerous section of trail that could injure someone unaware of it. Through these tasks, Naya watched him closely, evaluating not only his skill and bravery, but his character and respect for her people. Slowly, Elias began to understand the depth of the bond she spoke of. It was not simply a demand. It was a connection rooted in life, trust, and responsibility. And though he had never imagined such a bond for himself, he began to see the value in it. He had always lived alone, relying on his own strength, but here he realized that partnership, trust, and loyalty could create something far stronger than solitude. One afternoon, as they walked along a narrow path above the canyon, Naya stopped and looked at him seriously. "Elias, the decision you make will affect more than just you and me. It will affect your place among my people, and the way we remember those who act with courage and honor. Choose wisely." Elias nodded, the weight of her words settling heavily on his shoulders. He knew she was right. This was not a matter of simple choice. It was a matter of integrity, respect, and the continuation of life and trust within a community that had survived against great odds. That night, Elias lay awake outside, watching the stars twinkle above the canyon. He thought of the dangers they had faced, the trust that had grown between them, and the life that Naya had fought to preserve. He realized that courage was not only facing enemies, it was facing the responsibility that comes from saving a life and the choices that follow. And as he drifted into a restless sleep, Elias knew one thing with certainty. The journey ahead would test him in ways he had never imagined, not only in the wilds of the canyon, but in his heart. The next morning, Elias rose with the sun, feeling a mixture of anticipation and unease. He had spent several days in Naya's community, learning their ways and observing her strength, and yet the weight of the bond she had declared still pressed heavily on him. Today, however, the day would bring challenges that neither of them could ignore. Naya approached him, her movements as deliberate and graceful as ever. "Elias, we must go to the northern ridge," she said. "Some livestock have gone missing. Wolves, or perhaps wild dogs. We cannot let them threaten our people." Elias nodded, adjusting his hat and checking Thunder, who whinnied softly as if sensing the urgency. "Lead the way," he said. "I'll follow your guidance." They set out quickly, moving through the narrow canyon paths with caution. Elias noticed the ease with which Naya navigated the rocky terrain, every step precise, every handhold secure. He had learned much from her over the past days, and he trusted her instincts completely. As they approached the northern ridge, the evidence of the threat became clear. Deep tracks pressed into the soft soil and small tufts of fur caught on branches along the path. Naya crouched, examining the ground carefully. "They moved east," she whispered. "We must be careful." There may be more than one. Elias felt a surge of respect for her knowledge. In his own experience, danger often arrived suddenly, with little warning. But Naya could read the signs of the land as easily as reading a book. Together they followed the tracks, moving slowly, speaking only in whispers. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the rocks. Elias stiffened, his hand on his revolver. From the shadows, a pair of wild dogs emerged, their eyes glinting in the morning light. Naya stepped forward, holding a small wooden staff. "Stay calm," she said softly. "They will not attack if we do not provoke them." Elias watched in amazement as Naya moved with careful precision, her presence commanding yet calm. The dogs circled cautiously, sniffing the ground and each other. Elias took a deep breath, resisting the urge to act rashly. Together they managed to herd the animals away from the livestock. using a combination of gentle gestures, confident movements, and quiet authority. When the danger passed, Elias exhaled slowly. "You make it look easy," he said, admiration in his voice. Naya smiled faintly, a mixture of pride and humility. Experience teaches caution. Courage alone is not enough. They continued their journey, and as they moved deeper into the canyon, the terrain became more treacherous. Loose rocks, sudden drops, and narrow ledges tested their every step. At one point, Elias slipped slightly on a steep incline, but Naya grabbed his arm, steadying him with a firm but gentle grip. "Careful," she said. "The canyon does not forgive mistakes." Elias nodded, feeling a mixture of gratitude and admiration. Her presence was not only comforting but essential, and he realized that trust in this land and in her was as important as skill or strength. By midday, they reached a small plateau where the missing livestock had gathered. Wolves had surrounded the animals, keeping them trapped and tense. Naya crouched, studying their behavior, while Elias prepared to act if necessary. "This is dangerous," Elias said quietly. "They could attack if we move too quickly." Naya nodded. "We must use strategy, not force. Follow my lead." Together, they moved carefully, Naya drawing the animals' attention while Elias guided the livestock toward safety. It was a delicate balance. One misstep could trigger an attack. Elias felt his heart race, but he relied on Naya's instructions, following her guidance with precision. Slowly, methodically, they managed to lead the livestock away from the wolves and toward a safer area. When the last animal was secure, Elias allowed himself a moment to breathe. "I didn't think we could do it without conflict," he said, impressed. Naya smiled, though her eyes remained alert. "Conflict is not always necessary. Observation and patience can accomplish what force cannot." The experience brought them closer, their mutual respect deepening with every shared challenge. As they rested on the plateau, the wind carrying the scent of sage and earth, Elias realized how much he had learned from her. Not just survival skills, but perspective, patience, and the quiet strength that comes from knowing one's land and one's people. But their trials were far from over. As they descended the plateau, Elias noticed fresh tracks that were not animal in nature. Human footprints, hurried and erratic, leading toward the southern path. Naya crouched again, examining them carefully. "Trouble," she whispered. "Someone is coming."
They may have been following us since the canyon. Elias felt a surge of tension.
"We must warn the community," he said. Naya nodded, and together they moved quickly but quietly, using the shadows and natural cover to advance without being seen. As they approached the edge of the community, Elias could see figures in the distance. Strangers, likely scouts or bandits, moving cautiously, as if unaware they were being watched. "Stay low," Naya instructed. "We will not confront them unless necessary. Let's protect the people first." Elias followed her lead, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing on him. For the first time, he understood fully what Naya had meant about the bond between them. It was not simply about saving a life. It was about protection, loyalty, and courage in every action that followed. They reached the community and warned the elders, who quickly organized a small group to monitor the approaching strangers. Elias worked alongside them, reinforcing barricades and preparing for possible confrontation. Naya moved with calm authority, directing the community with confidence that inspired both respect and reassurance. When the strangers finally approached, they saw not a vulnerable group, but a prepared and organized community. Elias and Naya stood side by side, a silent signal of partnership and strength. The strangers, realizing the futility of confrontation, retreated without incident, leaving the canyon peaceful once again. As the evening settled, Elias and Naya returned to the small plateau where they had first rested. Both were tired, but the shared experience had brought a new depth to their connection. Elias looked at Naya, noticing the quiet satisfaction in her expression. The satisfaction of having protected her people without unnecessary violence. "You handled everything perfectly," Elias said, his voice filled with admiration. "I could not have done this without you." Naya shook her head slightly. "No one does anything alone, Elias. We work together because survival requires unity, trust, and respect. You have proven yourself a true partner today." Elias felt a warmth in his chest, a mixture of pride, respect, and something deeper that he could not yet name. He had faced danger countless times in his life, but never had he felt so connected to another person in such a short time. Naya's courage, wisdom, and calm strength had shown him a new way to live, not just surviving, but protecting, supporting, and trusting. As night fell, they sat by a small fire, the stars above bright and endless. The canyon was silent, except for the distant howl of a coyote and the gentle rustle of the wind through the juniper trees. Elias glanced at Naya, her face illuminated by the flickering flames, and realized that the bond she had declared was no longer just a matter of obligation. It had become a connection forged through shared trials, trust, and courage. "We are stronger together," Naya said softly, almost as if reading his thoughts. "Not just because of what we have faced, but because we have learned to trust each other, to rely on one another." Elias nodded, the truth of her words sinking in. He had come to the canyon as a lone rancher, used to relying only on himself. Now he realized that true strength came not from solitude, but from partnership, from loyalty, from courage that was shared, not solitary. As they settled for the night, Elias felt a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. He was no longer simply a man wandering the frontier. He was a protector, a partner, and someone whose actions could change not only his own life, but the lives of those around him. And as the stars shone above the quiet canyon, Elias knew that the trials they had faced together were only the beginning. The bond between him and Naya, forged in danger and strengthened through trust, would guide them through whatever challenges lay ahead. The morning sun rose over the canyon, painting the rocks in warm shades of orange and gold. Elias awoke to the soft sounds of the community stirring around him. Children laughing, elders speaking quietly, and the faint clatter of tools and cooking. He rose carefully, feeling the cool air against his skin, and glanced at Naya. She was already awake, tending to a small fire and preparing a simple breakfast of corn cakes and roasted vegetables. "Good morning," he said, smiling softly. Naya returned the smile, her dark eyes bright with purpose. "Morning," she replied. "Today is an important day. We must decide how to honor the bond between us, and also ensure that the community knows our intentions clearly." Elias felt his chest tighten. The bond she spoke of had grown stronger with each passing day, forged through danger, trust, and shared responsibility. He had come to respect her deeply, and in ways he had not expected. He had begun to care for her, not only for her courage and wisdom, but for the quiet strength in her heart. They prepared for the day together, moving through the canyon with purpose. Naya led him to the central gathering place of the community, a small open area surrounded by homes and gardens. Elders, men, and women were already gathering, their faces calm but attentive. The air was filled with anticipation, and Elias sensed that everyone understood the significance of the moment. Naya stepped forward first, her posture straight and dignified. She turned to Elias, her eyes meeting his. "Elias McCall," she said, her voice strong and steady. "You have saved my life and stood by me through danger. Our bond is not only for my people, but for the honor, we have both shown. Will you accept this bond and stand as my partner, as my husband, according to the customs of my people?" Elias swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words and the eyes of the community upon him. He thought of the journey they had shared, the danger of the canyon, the trust they had built, the courage they had shown together. He realized that this bond was not a burden, but a responsibility he was willing to embrace. "I accept," he said finally, his voice steady, "not out of obligation alone, but out of respect, trust, and the bond we have built. I will stand by you, Naya, and honor you and your people." A quiet murmur of approval passed through the community. The elders nodded, and Naya's face softened with relief and pride. Elias felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had not only honored her trust but also committed himself to a partnership built on courage, loyalty, and mutual respect. The elders guided them through the customs of the union. Naya's family and community members participated, offering blessings and gifts that symbolized protection, trust, and shared life. Elias learned the significance of each gesture: the planting of a small tree to represent growth, the lighting of a fire to symbolize warmth and guidance, and the offering of water to signify life and sustenance. As the ceremony progressed, Elias felt a deep connection not only to Naya, but to the land and the community around them. He realized that he was no longer a solitary rancher navigating the frontier alone. He was part of something greater, a partnership rooted in respect, honor, and shared experience. After the formalities, Naya and Elias stood together, hand in hand, overlooking the canyon. The morning sun reflected on the rocks, casting long shadows and highlighting the beauty of the rugged landscape. For a moment, there was silence, a peaceful, almost sacred stillness. "You have shown courage, not only in facing danger but in embracing responsibility," Naya said softly. "I am proud to walk beside you, Elias." Elias looked at her, admiration and warmth in his eyes. "And I am proud to walk beside you, Naya. You have taught me much about strength, patience, and honor. I will honor you and our bond every day." They spent the rest of the day working together with the community. Elias helped repair fences, guide livestock, and teach some of the young men and women skills he had learned as a rancher. Naya moved with calm authority, overseeing the work and offering guidance with quiet confidence. Together they demonstrated a partnership that inspired respect and admiration among those around them. As evening approached, they prepared a small celebration. The community gathered around a fire, sharing food, music, and stories. Children danced and laughed, and the elders spoke of the importance of trust, courage, and the bonds that unite people. Elias and Naya sat side by side, their hands entwined, feeling the warmth of acceptance and the strength of their shared connection. Naya turned to Elias as the fire crackled. "Do you feel it?" she asked softly. "The sense of belonging, not only to each other but to the land and the people?" Elias nodded, his gaze sweeping over the community and then returning to her. "Yes, I have never felt this way before. You have shown me that courage and loyalty are more than actions. They are choices we make every day. And I choose this, Naya. I choose you, and this life we will share." The night grew deep, and the stars above the canyon shone brilliantly, their light reflecting the quiet peace that had settled over the community. Elias and Naya walked to a quiet spot overlooking the edge of the canyon, the wind carrying the scent of sagebrush and the soft sounds of nocturnal life. "Tomorrow we will begin building a new home together," Naya said, her voice filled with quiet excitement. "A place where we can continue to honor our bond and protect the community." Elias smiled, feeling a sense of purpose and contentment he had never known. "I look forward to it," he said. Together we can face anything. The canyon, the land, and our lives. We will face them as partners. They sat in silence for a while, the stars above providing a peaceful canopy. The journey they had shared, from danger in the canyon to trust and partnership, had forged a bond that neither could deny. It was a bond built not on fear or obligation alone, but on respect, courage, and the shared understanding that they were stronger together. In the following weeks, Elias and Naya worked side by side to strengthen the community's defenses, tend to the land, and ensure that the livestock and people were safe. Elias taught some of the younger members practical skills he had learned on his ranch, while Naya shared the wisdom and traditions of her people. Together they created a balance of knowledge and experience, blending their worlds in a way that honored both. Over time, their relationship deepened beyond duty and respect. They shared moments of quiet laughter, long walks along the canyon trails, and conversations under the stars. Elias found himself learning not only about the land and the people, but about patience, humility, and the quiet strength that comes from understanding another's world. Naya, too, learned from him about the ways of the settlers, the skills of ranching, and the courage that comes from facing challenges head-on. One evening, as the sun set behind the canyon cliffs, casting the land in deep oranges and purples, Elias turned to Naya. "I never imagined that saving a life could lead to this," he said softly. "But now, I cannot imagine my life without you, without this community, without this bond." Naya smiled, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "And I cannot imagine my life without you, Elias. You have proven yourself a true partner, not only in action but in heart. Together we will continue to protect and honor this land and these people." The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. The canyon remained a place of beauty and challenge, but Elias and Naya faced each day together. Their bond, once formed in the urgency of danger, had grown into something lasting and strong, a partnership rooted in courage, respect, and love. The community thrived under their shared guidance. The elders praised their leadership. The children learned from both, and the land seemed more alive and vibrant under their care. Elias and Naya knew that life in the canyon would never be easy, but they also knew that together they could overcome any obstacle. As the story of their bond spread quietly through the canyon, it became a lesson in courage, trust, and partnership. People spoke of how a single act of bravery, the saving of a life, could create a connection that changed not only the lives of two individuals, but also the strength and unity of an entire community. One night, as they sat outside their small home watching the stars, Elias turned to Naya. "Do you remember the first day we met?" he asked, a faint smile on his lips. Naya laughed softly, the sound like the gentle flow of a stream. "Yes, you came riding through the canyon like a whirlwind, guns blazing and heart steady. I was certain we would both end up in trouble." Elias chuckled, feeling the warmth of the memory. "And yet, here we are, alive, together, and stronger than ever." Naya reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. "Yes. And we will continue this way, facing every challenge together, honoring the bond that began with courage and trust." As the stars shone above, Elias felt a deep sense of peace. The journey had been long, filled with danger, learning, and discovery, but it had led him to this moment. A life shared with Naya, a bond respected and honored, and a community strengthened by their courage and partnership. And in that quiet, star-filled night, Elias knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as one. The bond that had begun with a life saved had grown into a lifelong partnership, a union of hearts, minds, and spirits that neither time nor danger could break.